Hello. Is it time? I guess we'll find out. I think today we have a fun one regardless. Let us dive into the mystery of the Reaper of the Bailey. Let's go. There could be a trial part 3 and the fucking case goes on for another couple of weeks of streams, but I guess we'll find out. Tiny talk to Van Zeeks. You have no extension emotes. I can see them in my mind. Whenever I read the text, I can picture it. Let's see what Van Zeeks knows about the Reaper and the exchange of the assassins. We need to figure out who the British counterpart to Seijiro Jigoku was. I still think it's male Strongheart, but I guess we'll see. Alright, Van Zeeks, let's go. I've never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and I was aware of Gregson's involvement. That's the reason why I went to Fresno Street that day and how I came to discover the body. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Clearly, therefore, there's no reason to suspect me of being behind the assassin exchange. No link exists between him, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. So you deny all accusations by the prosecution? Both that you are the Reaper of the Bailey and that you masterminded the assassin exchange. Strongheart, it's fucking... fucking guy, huh? It's fucking this guy. It's this guy, huh? I acknowledge that the public at large believe me to be the Reaper. However, that's a fallacy, which I alone am in a position to forswear. Naturally, the prosecution believes the testimony just given by the accused to be untrue. Rinosuke Naruhodo. Yes? Let me ask you, why are you here? What really brings you to this courtroom? A desire to uncover the truth. If it is Strongheart, how in the fuck is he able to be a judge? I mean, Judge Jigoku is a judge. Oh. He's the Japanese side. The British side is the mastermind. But he's still in a position. We know he's in a position. Whoever it is in a position of power. Whoever they were, they gave Gregson like a faux assignment to get him on the boat to France. I think it's Strongheart. Desire to uncover the truth. Even if the truth proves your client to be guilty. From all my experiences in this courtroom, I've come to realize something. The truth can't be hidden. Sooner or later, it will come out. Come on, Van Zeeks, I want to believe you. So it's always my intention to work with my client in pursuit of the truth. I want you to remember what you just said. Enough dilatory chatter. Counsel for the defense, proceed to cross-examine the witness. Yes, my lord. I know exactly what you're thinking, Kazuma. I know you're just waiting to point it out. The contradiction you're convinced lies somewhere within this man's testimony. Problem is, we have to also prove it now if we're to get anything out of the testimony. The Reaper and the Assassin exchange. So he's never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill. What evidence do we have before we get into this? Okay. Hold it! So you're not what the general public refer to as the infamous Reaper of the Bailey? Exactly. Don't imagine for a moment that the court will be satisfied with a one-word answer on this. I realize that. If you're intending to comment on every sentence, this could take a while, Kazuma. Didn't you find it disturbing, though? That, one by one, defendants who had been acquitted after your unsuccessful prosecution were killed? Let me answer that question by posing another. If, one by one, defendants who had been acquitted after your successful defense were killed, would you find that disturbing? Disturbing. I couldn't possibly say how that would make me feel with a one-word answer like that. Exactly. Well, that told me. But even though I'm not the Reaper, that doesn't mean I ignored all the hearsay. Okay, it's nothing from that. He's been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years, and he was aware of Gregson's involvement. Hold it! Okay. You say for years. How long exactly? Since the very first time the Reaper's influence was felt in this courtroom. 10 years ago now. And your investigations led you somehow to Inspector Gregson, you're saying? I didn't want to believe it. He was a personal acquaintance. We'd worked on cases together in the past. Yeah, they were close. A friend, even. It felt like a betrayal, but I demanded permission to search his office at the Yard without his knowledge. Which is when you found his secret notebook, is it? It's when I first learnt of the location he'd noted only as Grouse, and the appointment at 5 PM on the 31st. Though I didn't know the significance of those details at the time. So now we're at the nub of the matter. As it turns out, the significance for me personally was very unfortunate. Okay. Now that's the reason why I went to Fresno Street that day and how I came to discover the body. Hold it! Okay. But why did you go to that specific location? I thought that if it was the Reaper's headquarters, then by turning up there at 5 o'clock I would catch whoever was involved red-handed. Sadly, all that was awaiting me was the Inspector's corpse. Yes, even though it wasn't designed for you, you walked straight into the trap set by Jigoku. Exactly. Jigoku had intended to implicate Hugh Boone, but unhappily for me, I arrived at the scene first. Huh. A ridiculously careless blunder. Moved on to just throwing insults around, I see then, Kazuma. Think what you will. It doesn't change the truth. Nothing so far, then. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Hold it! There is a link between you and Gregson, though. Of course. We were close acquaintances. We'd worked on numerous cases together. I considered the man to be a mentor of sorts. He taught me a number of important lessons. He did? Such as what? Where to buy good fish and chips, and such like. Well, that was convincing. Dr. Wilson was a coroner, of course, but that was some time in the past. And in any case, I understand it was several years ago now that he was invited to work at a Japanese university. That's right, he was a visiting professor at the Imperial Yume University in Tokyo. It should be unambiguously clear then that no link exists between myself and him. In other words, I had no motive for sending some assassin across the oceans to kill the man. Sounds plausible enough, and I want to believe it. But something about this just doesn't quite sit right with me. I am pretty sure, so Van Zieks is saying, there is no common thread that exists between himself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. But we know that Dr. Wilson was he was the coroner who did the autopsy on Barrock's brother. Now, if we look at that autopsy report and Gregson is mentioned, there's our link. So let's have a look. So there, yeah, coroner John H. Wilson, victim's name Clint Van Zieks. So if we can find Gregson on this, then we're golden. Yep, there we go. Credit to Inspector Gregson for petitioning so doggedly for the autopsy procedure. There we go. There's our link. Clint's death. Clint's death and autopsy. Alright. Let's present this. Present Clint's autopsy report.
Objection!
There you go. What is this? An autopsy report? Wait, this is 10 years old. From the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zieks. What? My brother's autopsy report. I'm pleased to see. The defense doesn't intend to run from the undeniable truth. Have to bring this stuff up. Order in court. What reason do you have for presenting a 10-year-old autopsy report here, counsel? The autopsy report of the professor's final victim. It's an indelible link between Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson, and the defendant. Not that accursed name again. The professor. I've personally researched all the court records relating to that case. I know that at the time, autopsy was considered sacrilege to the victim's souls. And for a member of the aristocracy like Lord Clint Van Zieks, it was unthinkable. But someone implored the powers that be to allow the autopsy to go ahead. Inspector Gregson. He declared that he was certain he would obtain conclusive proof from the procedure. And it was Dr. Wilson who conducted the autopsy. His signature is clearly visible on the document. As promised by Gregson, the autopsy did indeed produce evidence. Evidence that conclusively proved Genshin Asogi was guilty of the murders. In my brother's dying moments, he mustered all his remaining strength to leave that vital clue behind. Indeed. That was the key to indicting the professor for his crimes and the conclusive evidence that convicted him. What was in the autopsy that they were able to pin it on Clint? Or pin it on Genshin? They fucking bite him or something like that, and they found like traces of his blood or some shit like that, I don't know. It enabled Lord Van Zieks here to avenge his brother's senseless death with a marvelous victory in court. Maybe like under his fingernails or something like that. A marvelous victory, was it? I wonder if that's really true. What? Could the same be said if it turned out that the key piece of evidence in question was in fact fabricated? If the inspector, the coroner, and the prosecutor all colluded together to cast an innocent Japanese man as a mass murderer and send him to his death. That's outrageous. And now, 10 years later, for some reason the secret has been threatened and needs protecting. Which is why the inspector and the coroner had to be silenced, isn't it? By someone in power in Japan and in Britain, using the two killers recruited for the assassin exchange. Oh shit. Was Genshin not the... Order at once. Was Genshin not the Reaper? Huh. Big if true. 10 years ago, my father was convicted in this very courtroom as a mass murderer, to be sentenced to death. But it was all a sham, and I swore to myself that I'd prove it. Which is why I had to come to Britain. Whatever the cost. You'll have to forgive me if I feel compelled to toast this vengeful Nipponese's tenacity of purpose here. The professor. So the professor was the mass murderer that killed Barrock's brother, and that was Kazuma's dad. And he was executed. Well, he was executed, but his execution wasn't successful, or was like faked. And then he was put in the graveyard, and then he woke up and then he got shot as he was trying to escape the grave. So now Kazuma's theory is that it was all fabricated and his father was scapegoated, I guess, to try and hide the actual killer. So I wonder, is the Reaper of the Bailey and the Professor, are they one and the same? Could the Professor have been Strongheart? Guess we'll see. That's really shit if like, because Genshin was friendly. He was friendly with Clint, and he was friendly with a bunch of people. Like, he came over as one of the students. So like, he was thrown under the bus. I was like, yeesh. Yeah. Now, fucking Kazuma saying that there were 3 people who were involved in the autopsy report, basically, or involved in getting his dad convicted. It was the coroner, it was the inspector, and it was the prosecutor. And now 2 of those people are dead, and those specific 2 were the targets of the International Assassin Exchange, which is It is very sus. It is very suspicious that he brings it up. So Van Zieks is the only one left of those three. So his theory does have some validity, I think. However, he who fails to quash his emotions in the courtroom has failed as a lawyer. Come on, Kazuma, you know this won't wash. You're claiming your father was misrepresented in a trial that took place a whole decade ago. You must see that without evidence. That's nothing more than a wild accusation. As it happens, I have evidence. What? What's he got? As the court has heard, I crossed the channel to France with Gregson on the 31st. I went with him on the pretext of being the assassin recruited to kill Seishiro Jigoku. But my true intentions were to make the inspector tell me the truth. The trial is wild. I mean, this is basically the conclusion of both games. This plot is like overarching both games, basically. This is the conclusion of the two games, essentially. I think it's why Kazuma went to Japan or was going to England in the first place. It's why Ryunosuke ended up there. We ended the first game with the Morse code with the names. You know, this is a big thing. So he wanted to make Gregson tell him the truth. What truth? The truth about the evidence. And he acknowledged what I had already deduced. There's a closely guarded secret about what went on in that autopsy 10 years ago. Uh-oh. What? A secret? I know nothing of any secret. While we waited for my supposed mark in Jigoku's cabin, I drew my clan's illustrious sword, Kazuma, before the inspector's eyes. He very quickly understood what my true motive was. Right, I see. You're that Asogi's young lad, are you? And what? You're gonna cut me down with that thing, is that it? That will very much depend on the answers you give to my questions. I want to know what really happened 10 years ago. The truth. That's all. Before we get into it, let me make one thing clear. I still believe your father was the professor. There's no doubt in my mind. But unfortunately, back then, we didn't have the evidence we needed to make the crime stick. So, you admit it then? The evidence used in my father's trial was fabricated? It was for the good of the country. Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. Anyway, I was just following orders. Orders? What exactly did you do? Speak. Remember we had that quote from Strongheart last thing that I was like, chick. It was like, you know, the Britain, like, denying, like, involvement or something like that. And fitting as well. It was Strongheart. Even if your life depends on it. That's right. Even then. He's taking it to his grave too, huh? And there's where the sword gets stuck in the box. So that's when the tip of the sword broke. Oh, Kazuma-sama. If the results of Clint Van Zieks' autopsy were fabricated, then the investigating officer Gregson and the lead coroner Wilson must have known about it. And they can only have been ordered to pervert the course of justice in that way by one man. The man leading the case for the prosecution, Barak Van Zieks. In other words, the defendant did have cause to organize this exchange of assassins. Exactly. And as we established earlier, it has to have been the Reaper himself who liaised with Jigoku in Japan to arrange the exchange. Ugh. So it follows that the Reaper's true identity can only be that of the man who stands accused in this courtroom today, Barak Van Zieks. Make him squeal, eh? Hit a big man, I don't think that's going to happen.
Objection!
Kazuma Asogi. What? What you've just told the court. Are you absolutely certain of your facts? Did Gregson really fabricate evidence for that trial 10 years ago? I heard it with my own ears. His shameful admission. Well, Van Zieks is probably also not happy because that means that they didn't actually get the man who killed his brother. So he's probably going to... I would assume, obviously I'm not the writers, I'm not the creators of the story, I would assume he would be on board with trying to figure out the truth because he wants justice. He wanted justice brought to whoever killed his brother. In that case, I know the name of the Reaper. What? Lord Van Zieks? I gave no such orders. I know that for certain. Which narrows down the remaining possibilities to one. If Lord Van Zieks isn't the one behind all this, then yes, there is only one other person who could have done something like that. I believe I know who it is too. You... I just had a feeling this name was going to come up. The true identity of the infamous Reaper of the Bailey is... Oh, fuck. My guess is Strongheart, but... So who have we got in our people? Susato? I don't think so. She'd have been fucking 6 years old. Shomes, Iris. Iris was barely a fucking twinkle. Mikutaba, Jigoku, Gina, Strongheart, Barok, Evie, Vigil, Daily, Barry. It's definitely Iris. Gregson, Kazuma, Gossip, Venus, Sandwich. It's interesting they still have Gossip and Daily Vigil here as individual characters. Fabian de Rousseau, Pepino, Maria. I think it's Strongheart.
Take that!
The only person who could have arranged the assassin exchange and manipulated the autopsy results is the Lord Chief Justice himself, Lord Mael Strongheart. What? Lord Strongheart? Yes, it's true that 10 years ago the defendant handled the prosecution of the professor in court, but he only took over the case after his brother, Lord Clint Van Zieks, had been killed. In fact, he requested to be the prosecutor to take it from Strongheart. I can only assume that this is the most inappropriate joke in British judicial history. Well, Lord Van Zieks, 10 years ago, I was very new to my profession, but I had a burning desire to avenge my brother's death, so I pleaded for control of the case. Yep, we knew this. The investigation to that point, the supplication of the Lords to allow my brother's corpse to be examined, all the evidence I was given, the autopsy reports, it all came from you. I've spent my life since then believing I was in your debt for the way you stood aside and let me handle the trial. But I see now. I was very much mistaken. It was a hugely influential force that caused the inspector and the coroner to break the law 10 years ago. And that same force was still felt a decade later on the other side of the world by Seishiro Jigoku. Lord Strongheart, everything falls into place when we recognize that you are the Reaper of the Bailey. The court awaits your response, my lord. This may very well go down in British judicial history, but I assure you, it is no joke. Consider this a formal accusal by the defense. It doesn't warrant a response. A formal accusal? Don't be absurd. The defense's claims are utter nonsense, a wild fantasy at best. You're not going to defend yourself? You claim there was some wrongdoing with Lord Clint Van Zieks' autopsy. That's utterly untrue.
Objection!
But I heard it from Gregson's own lips. He admitted to it. And where is your evidence? What? Gregson's dead now. Unless you were thinking of summoning a ghost to the stand. You mean to say... I forget how the system works in your little backwater country. But in the courts of the British Empire, without evidence, there is no case. I have no intention of entertaining some wild fantasy that can't possibly be substantiated by anyone or anything. Ugh. Got it. New animation, huh? Always when you see new animation for the characters. Order. Order in court. Following Inspector Gregson's murder and in light of Dr. Wilson's death as well, there's really no one left who could testify about the events of 10 years ago, is there? Who can testify about the events of 10 years ago? Sholmes and Iris went off. You barely follow what happened in the last 10 minutes. Everything's happened in the last 10 minutes. We pointed out that Van Zieks does have a connection to Gregson and Dr. Wilson. We found out that when Kazuma went on the boat with Gregson. Oh wait, Vigil, whatever his name is. Well, I'll just run down this name. We'll discuss. Yeah. So yeah, Kazuma said that whenever he went on the boat with Gregson the day before he died, he asked Gregson about the evidence that was presented against his brother that got him convicted as the professor 10 years ago. And Gregson admitted that the evidence was fabricated, and they did it for the good of the British Empire. And he would take the details to his grave, and that's when Kazuma attacked him with the sword. So then Kazuma in the court is like, well, you organized that, Barak Van Zieks, you were the prosecutor of the case, the professor case, so you were the one who ordered the falsification of the autopsy and all that kind of stuff. And Barak's like, I didn't do that. He's like, and then Barak's like, so you saying that makes me realize I know who the Reaper is. And then Rinosuke is like, I also have an idea, and I have been thinking it was Strongheart. And we accused Strongheart, and the accusation was at least correct in the gameplay mechanic. And we're basically pointing out that like he was the big power who was able to organize the international assassin exchange. Thanks for the follow, or that's for the stopping by, checking those up. And Van Zieks was like, he was only the prosecutor of the professor case because after Clint was killed, his brother, he explicitly asked to take over the case, which was originally Strongheart's case, and Strongheart gave him all the evidence, which would have been all the fabricated stuff. And now Strongheart's not even trying to defend himself because he's saying there's no one who can bring evidence because Gregson's dead. So that was the real purpose of the assassin exchange. He wanted to hide his evidence. He wanted to hide the wrongdoings, right? This court has no business raking over the coals of a case that was concluded a decade ago. The accusal brought by the prosecution and the defense is categorically denied. I take it there are no objections. Kazuma. He's more or less waited his whole life for this moment. Is there really nothing else we can do now? Is there no other avenue we can go down in pursuit of the truth about what happened all those years ago? And there's a chance that Kazuma's dad was never the professor. Like, he might have been innocent. Yeah. If only there was someone who could testify about Clint Van Zieks' autopsy. Wasn't Maria there? Didn't Maria say she was there? No, that was about someone else, right? Maria was there for something. She told us. She said her mum would bring things in and she would look. What age is Maria? I think Maria was there. We don't have Dr. Scythe, but we do have Maria. If Maria's 19, she would have been 9 at the time. I think we can bring in Maria to testify. He's gone to extraordinary lengths to cover his tracks, even so far as dispatching an assassin all the way to Japan to ensure Dr. Wilson's silence. And Dr. Scythe won't say anything against Strongheart. Dr. Scythe won't, but her daughter will. But there's still one ray of hope.
Objection.
Actually, there is one person. One person who could still testify about that autopsy. Don't be ridiculous. There's no one left. Oh. Who, Rinosuke? Who? Tell me. Kazuma, Please. This trial can't end. Not yet. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the truth. Fuck you, Strongheart, huh? The person the defense would like to call to the stand to testify about the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zieks is... Maria Gori.
Take that!
Denied. What? I want to know why. And I want to know why you're proposing to call such a witness with that look of utter desperation on your face. In other words, you're wide of the mark, Rinosuke. Is wrong? Oh, whoops. Nice, don't spare my feelings or anything. I was very confident about that. Well, my bad, huh? Given the contemptible allegations you're making, Counsel, I won't be letting that blunder pass unpunished. I'm pretty sure... I'm pretty sure Maria said she was there. Anyway, we'll look again here now. There was somebody else present at the autopsy, Mr. Naruhodo. Surely you haven't forgotten. No, I know. I'll get it right this time. Who else was there? At the autopsy... Mikotaba was there. Mikotaba was there because he fucking wrote the report. And Dr. Wilson just signed it. That's right. Because Iris recognized the writing and then mistook the signature for the writing person. It was Mikotaba. That's right.
Take that!
There we go. Heaven help us. Another Japanese. An expert in forensic medicine, my lord. Professor Yujin Mikotaba. 16 years ago, he came to London with Seishiro Jigoku and Genshin Asuki as a visiting student. And what could his testimony possibly tell us? Professor Mikotaba was the primary assistant during the autopsy in question. Oh, it's very, like... They're not shy about it at this period in time. Yeah. That the people are very... At least... people in Britain are very xenophobic towards the Japanese. I believe whenever this game, so whenever the PC or the collection came out of these two, it was the first time these games had ever been released outside in the West, and there was a big thing about the racism, and the translators were very explicit that it was intended to be a part of the story. That's what it was like at the time, or at least, you know, this fictional version of it, and they didn't want to remove any of that. So. He's also the person who actually penned the report. Incorrect. The autopsy was carried out by the coroner, Dr. Wilson. The report carries his signature. It was the primary assistant's duty to keep a written record of the coroner's work during the procedure. In actual fact, the coroner merely read over the report at the end and signed it. In other words, Professor Mikotaba witnessed the entire autopsy from start to finish. The defense demands that Professor Mikotaba be summoned as a witness as a matter of urgency. Whatever really happened in that autopsy laboratory 10 years ago is something only he can tell us. The defense's demand is denied. What? But Professor Mikotaba is in London at this very moment. We could summon him to the stand in minutes. No, of course he's not going to agree to it. Strongheart has no intention of summoning anyone who knows. He's too concerned about protecting himself. Prosecutor Asuki, let me refresh your memory as you seem to have forgotten the prosecution's stance. Only minutes ago, you accused the defendant of being the Reaper and of masterminding the assassin exchange. I did, yes. So, present your evidence for those claims, and make your case complete. He's trying to worm his way out. At this time, I don't have the requisite evidence. But that's exactly why we need witness testimony. The professor case is closed. There are no clues in the distant past that will bolster your argument today. I'm afraid to say, Prosecutor Asugi, that you would appear to be possessed by the spirit of your late homicidal father. Now, as I stated earlier, this court has already reached a conclusion with respect to the matter at hand. Inspector Gregson was murdered by Japanese Supreme Court Judge Seishiro Jugoku. As for any hidden circumstances that may exist, they will be investigated in due course by the proper authorities.
Objection.
He's trying to get away. But we all know what will happen. That'll just give the mastermind of the whole venture time to cover his tracks again. By which you mean me. Your punishment for this contemptible behavior will be decided at a later date. As for you, Prosecutor Asugi, you will be remanded following these proceedings. Willingly, I trust, since you gave your word. Ugh. That's the lawyer version of it, arsehole. This futile game of revenge is over, young Master Asugi. We can't let it end like that for Kazuma. Yeah, like he's... That will be all. I hereby declare this trial to be over. Court is... Is Van Zieks. No? You shouted. Let's go. Mr. Sholmes. There's no place for amateur detection, Mr. Sholmes. Oh. I know why the music kind of got me teared up. May I remind you these proceedings are closed to the general public. You will leave the courtroom at once. Yeah, he and Iris went off to do something. They went to prepare.
Objection.
Mr. Sholmes was instrumental in the apprehension of Seishiro Jigoki before he fled from Europe. The court should hear what he has to say. Lord Mael's Strongheart, it's imperative that you refrain from bringing this trial to an end at this stage. Is it really? And why would that be? You need only recall your own words from the opening of the trial to answer that question. If I may, we will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Surely it can't be that the shock of being accused of being the Reaper yourself has erased that from your memory, can it? The whole truth, sir, has already been uncovered. It would seem that we have a great many important members of the judiciary present here today. I put it to you, my dear fellows, should the trial end at this juncture? After all, why have you been invited to attend? To nod along to the prevarications of your superiors? Order, order in court. It seems to me that we stand before a door that leads to a new era of legal practices. A door that is ajar. Let us emerge from the shadows of the Reaper's decade-long ascendancy. For you and you alone, my dear fellows, have the power to push this door open now. The auditors in the galley have no rights to express an opinion on court proceedings. Silence! He's right. The judge has absolute authority here. Yes, if he calls the trial to an end, it must end. But will that really do? I sense dark things occurring behind the scenes. Dark things indeed. Is there a single person here present who can honestly say they wouldn't do the same? But what's... The trial should go on. Summon the witness. That's right, we need to clear this up before that young Japanese fellow is remanded in custody. My lord, you assured those present that you would uncover the whole truth here. Vindicate yourself of this outlandish accusation. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That's the very foundation of British law. A toast to my dependable colleagues in the gallery. On with the trial! On with the trial! Testify! Testify! Well, my lord, you hear the voice of British justice, I take it. I think you'll find it'll be rather awkward to silence. The court will recess briefly. I have no intention of shrinking from these allegations. Bailiff, arrange for the subpoena of the witness at once. As soon as the gentleman arrives at the courthouse, we shall reconvene. A recess won't be necessary, my lord. Pardon? Mikutaba is a close friend of mine. He accompanied me today and is waiting in the antechamber as we speak. I do believe he's been enjoying a little trip down memory lane, in fact. What? Professor Mikutaba's here in the courthouse? Mr. Sholmes, you didn't notice what happened, did you? My dear fellow, no one is in a better position to answer that question than you, surely. I wasn't just asking for the fun of it, you know. Well, I must thank you for your assistance in this matter, Mr. Sholmes. However, you are of no further use here. Kindly leave the courtroom at once. But of course, in truth I find myself rather busy now as a result of these developments. Mr. Naruhodo. Yes. I trust you have Iris's little lucky charm with you. Absolutely. It's still in my pockets. She sends her regards and a reminder. If you find yourself at a dead end, the ears are at your disposal. Just one tug, if you please. So it doesn't fucking yank his ear off again. Oh, of course. In that case, the trial will continue without delay. Bailiff, show the witness to the stand. Oh! Did you see him? With Lord Strongheart. He's the Reaper of the Bailey. Where exactly is this trial going to take me, I wonder? Just how deep am I about to be plunged into the blackness of the abyss? Well, I'm ready. I'm ready to head into the heart of this maelstrom and confront whatever horrors it tries to drown me under. Shit's good, man, huh? Yes, we'll save. Trial part 3? Yep. Who knows if we finish today? There's Maria. I knew she'd be involved somehow. So, witness. Oh, wrong card. Please state your name and occupation for the court. Yujin Mikutaba, lecturer in forensic medicine at the Imperial Yume University in Tokyo, Japan. And Professor Mikutaba, the young lady beside you is... this is Dr. Maria Gori, Scotland Yard's practicing coroner, the daughter of Dr. Scythe, I understand. Yes, Dr. Scythe. I'm afraid I can't tell you why she's here. She just appeared. Summon this strange Japanese man as a witness to that autopsy. But you don't summon Mama. That makes no sense. She was there too. That's about the size of it. I've had her eyes boring into the side of my cheek constantly. Whilst I was in the antechamber too. Poor man. The idea of it was making me shudder. The revelations about Dr. Scythe that came to light some days ago defiled the reputation of the entire judiciary. She was therefore deemed unfit to appear as a witness in today's proceedings. The Ministry of Justice's decision on that is final. Well, we wouldn't want any more perjury to be committed, would we? The Ministry of Justice. Some questionable strings are being pulled, I think. I remember you, Dr. Mikutaba, but I certainly never expected to be meeting you under these circumstances. Yes, it's been a long while, Lord Strongheart. The prosecution understands that you were a visiting student of forensic science in London until 10 years ago. That's right. I studied under Dr. Wilson at St. Sinners. So, you were present at the autopsy of my brother, Lord Clint Van Zieks. I was, yes. I assisted Dr. Wilson with the entire procedure. Mama is far more skilled than any Japanese man. Well, Dr. Wilson asked me to be his primary assistant on that occasion. And this autopsy report was actually penned by you, I believe. Yes. I noted all the doctor's findings, and when we were done, he read through the document and signed it. Poor Mama. As secondary assistant, she wouldn't have had such a good view of all the innards. So, Professor, do you remember Inspector Gregson? Yes, of course. If it wasn't for his insistence, Lord Van Zieks' autopsy would never have happened. He was absolutely convinced that it would reveal decisive evidence against Genshin, you see. So Lord Strongheart had to entreat the nobility to allow it to take place. Do correct me if I'm wrong, my lord. It was as a result of that autopsy that a mass murderer was apprehended and justice was done. But Gregson admitted it before he was killed. Noted study. Bless up, huh? He admitted that the results of the autopsy were fabricated. You were there at the time, so you must testify. You have an obligation to tell the truth about what really went on. Absolutely. That's precisely why I'm here. And that's why I'm here too. Very well then. You will give your formal testimony now, witness. But before you begin, a word of warning. Oh? You will state truthfully and accurately what you saw and what you heard at the time. I wouldn't dream of doing otherwise, my lord. The moment your testimony verges on supposition, I will expel you from my courtroom. Remember that. We'll probably go a little bit, maybe a little bit longer tonight for Ace Attorney. We'll maybe not do it, because it seems there's quite a bit more left to the case. We'll do a little bit longer. I'm going to be missing tomorrow's stream, because I'm at the cinema. What we might do is we would only have one stream of Super Mario Odyssey this week. I might, and that's on Thursday. If we don't finish Ace Attorney tonight, we'll continue on Thursday. It's getting very juicy. So, the autopsy of Clint Van Zieks. From my own observations, I couldn't say there was any indication of the autopsy reports having been fabricated. Death resulted from a wound made by a Western-style sword transfixing the heart. That I found a little strange. There were no other signs of internal injury. Nothing questionable at all. It was just that beautiful but dangerous piece of evidence removed from the man's stomach. Was there a bit of the blade? Presumed to have been swallowed up by the victim as a way... Oh, it wouldn't be swallowed then, okay. Presumed to have been swallowed by the victim as a way of posthumously identifying his assailant. I dare type it, I am super exhausted. Oh no. So what they... I mean, my initial idea was that he bit something and swallowed it, but it wouldn't be dangerous anyway. No indication. Nothing to suggest fabrication. Professor Amigo Tab, are you certain about that? Well, nothing that I could positively identify as such, much less swear to in testimony. Ugh. Well, that clears things up nicely. The only fabrication here, Asugi, has come from you. What? You claim the inspector confessed just before his death. But that is the fabrication. He freely acknowledged it, I swear he did. Freely. With the tip of a sword at his throat. The man was clearly at his wit's end. The court will give no credence to this confession that was uttered in obvious desperation. Quite simply, there was nothing questionable about the investigation of Lord Clint Van Zieks' death. And with this testimony we have, without question, uncovered the whole truth of the matter. If I may, my lord. There was most certainly something questionable about it, and the whole truth does rather elude us, I feel. I beg your pardon? Well, you're obviously aware of the facts of the case. All four of the professor's previous victims died when an enormous beast was set upon them that ripped out their throats. Oh, such horrifying crimes. But curiously, the killer's last victim, Lord Clint Van Zieks, suffered a different fate. Yes, you're right. He was stabbed through the heart with a sword. That's enough. I believe I warned you about this, witness. I promised to curtail your testimony as soon as it entered the realms of supposition or speculation. Very well, my lord. In that case, the defense will pursue a conclusion to this during the cross-examination. What? I have the right to cross-examine every witness after testimony. and I fully intend to exercise that right. Ryunosuke. I'm afraid that even the presiding judge has no authority to contravene the letter of the law, as I'm sure every member of the judiciary present in the gallery would agree. Foggy. Very well. You may begin, counsel. However, the moment your argument strays from the established facts, I will not hesitate to bring the cross-examination to an end. Proceed with caution. Yes, my lord. God. The big dick of the law. Bringing it down on us. Alright, let's just save. So from his own observation, I couldn't say there was any indication of the autopsy reports having been fabricated. Okay.
Hold it!
You couldn't say? No, sadly not. So we have 3 people in the stand, so that's 3 people who can react to anything that's said. So it's Maria, Mikotaba, and Van Zieks. But then you couldn't say there was any indication either. Wasn't any indication either, could you? No, true, I couldn't. I was at Dr. Wilson's side as he performed the procedure, recording what he did. But at times, of course, he instructed me to fetch implements and such like. Whilst I was away from the operating table, obviously I could have missed something. And at those times, what was the secondary assistant doing? Following this Japanese man's orders to adjust the lighting or pass some implements. But that doesn't mean Mama wasn't a vital part of the team. Quite, yes. So would you kindly refrain from staring at my cheek like that? Professor Mikotaba, think. Was there nothing at all that seemed out of place to you? Well, yes, there was, as a matter of fact. Right. Statement number 2. Death resulted from a wound made by a Western-style sword transfixing the heart. That I found a little strange.
Hold it!
In all the previous 4 killings attributed to the professor, the victims were killed by an enormous dog, I believe. Their throats were, well, mauled? Correct. And yet Lord Van Zieks was stabbed. Do you mean to say... You think Lord Clint Van Zieks may not, in fact, have been one of the professor's victims? There is no basis on which to doubt the findings of the investigations carried out at the time. But... Genshin Asugi confessed to all his crimes upon his arrest. He admitted to having taken the lives of all 5 members of the aristocracy. Ugh! Which one? The dog or the sword? The dog, I assume. Yet the beast that was used to carry out the killings was never identified. No evidence was found to suggest that Genshin had ever kept a dog. A true hound of hell. The only dog we have in this game is fucking Toby. Gina's dog. So there were no other signs of internal injury, nothing questionable at all.
Hold it!
Press Maria. But, you weren't actually present at the autopsy yourself, were you, Dr. Gori? So I thought she was. That was my mistake. Does that matter? Well, I just wonder how useful your testimony can be in that case, really. I mean, it would be different if your mother, Dr. Scythe, were in the stand, but... I've read all the paperwork about the case, and Mama's told me the story countless times. The statement I just made is exactly what's written in the autopsy report. I did confirm that myself at the time, it's true. Besides the stab wound, there were no other signs of internal trauma. What did they find inside the body? That's what I want to learn. I see. Mama told me all about it. Oh? She said there was nothing of note internally. But they did find an amazing piece of evidence. Something unbelievable. Unbelievable? What do you mean? Come on, Dr. Gori, what was it? And now we've... Next statement, right? It was just that beautiful but dangerous piece of evidence removed from the man's stomach. What was it?
Hold it!
What was the evidence? What exactly was it, though? What does beautiful but dangerous mean? Well... It was sparkly and round with a hole, as if it might slip over a finger, perhaps. Oh! The fucking red ring, right? Yes. And fucking Daily Vigil has that bloody ring now. So in the picture we saw of a younger version, why would he swallow a ring? Well, the idea was that he would swallow something to prove, like to attribute to the killer. So their theory is that he bit the ring, swallowed the ring, so they would be able to attribute it to who killed him. That's their theory anyway. We saw a picture of Genshin and Clint, I think. And Genshin had the ring on his finger, and we've seen that exact same ring, or at least the same model in game on Daily Vigil's finger. He's wearing it. It was a ring belonging to Genshin Asugi. My father's ring was inside the victim's stomach. At the time, Genshin wore a large ring on the digitous quarters of his left hand, the fourth or ring finger. I'd understood it was some sort of keepsake. When my father left Japan for London 16 years ago, I was 8 years old. But I remember that ring. You do? My father's possessions were sent to our family home in Japan after his death, but the ring wasn't among them. Obviously not. It was a key piece of evidence. It remains under lock and key in the stores at Scotland Yard to this day. See, I don't think it does. I think Daily Vigil's wearing it. I don't know if we can see it in the photo. Nah, you can't see his fingers. He was wearing it though, because he kept... Anytime he saw his hands, he was wearing it. After the autopsy, Genshin was summoned by the police to check for the presence of his ring. It wasn't on his hand, of course. Moreover, there were deep abrasions on his finger where it had been pulled off. They arrested the man there and then, right before my eyes. How could they? I brought the ring along with me today. Which he has it? It must be, maybe it's just the same model then. What? Here it is, a bit dusty from years in the stores. Okay, I must have said the same model then. Okay, game. Okay. You got me. Good gracious. Yes, that's it. I haven't seen that in 10 long years. And that was found inside the victim's stomach. It just seemed very weird that he also had a red ring, but okay. Yes, I'm afraid so. You hesitated there, Professor Mikutaba. Should we read something into that? Well, it's just that thinking back now, I didn't actually witness the moment it was extracted from the victim's body. Oh my, really? At that precise moment, Dr. Wilson had asked me to fetch him a new scalpel, you see. Suspicious. Dr. Gory, the removal of historic evidence from the stores requires my consent, does it not? However it came to be here, the court cannot deny that this is crucial evidence for today's proceedings. Very well. You may submit it. Mr. Asugi's ring. A ring belonging to Genshin Asugi found in Lord Clint Van Zieks' stomach during the autopsy. The claws clasping the gem look sharp enough to cause a very nasty scratch. Not the sort of ring normally seen in Japan. They almost look like claws protecting that jewel. We must examine it very carefully, Mr. Naruhodo. Very carefully indeed. Let's have a look at it. Before we examine the final statement. Stomach remains, eh? Casually as you do. These fat claws are doing a good job of protecting the equally fat gemstone in the middle of this ring. Yes, if you were clumsy, you'd give yourself a rather nasty cut on them, I should think. Ow! Now my finger's bleeding. Claws really are sharp. Oh my, that was very quick clumsiness, Mr. Naruhodo, even for you. Who would make such a dangerous ring? You couldn't swallow it without doing yourself some fairly serious damage, surely. I would get like lodged in your throat or something, right? A sticky mochi bun of about that size would go down much better, with some red bean paste in the middle. Someone as clumsy as me would probably manage to choke on it somehow. It's like a big boy of a ring. Yeah, you ain't swallowing this thing fucking easy, hey? Yeah, they find no, like, scratch marks or anything like that. Yep. Nothing questionable, right? We're gonna
Hold it!
save and press the ring to what Dr. Gurry was saying. That there would be internal damage if you swallowed that ring. Fucking scared the shit out of myself there. And it was the wrong sound. I was like, ah! Like when you accidentally press A too many times in the Pokemon Center, and you like heal your Pokemon up one too many times. Okay, we'll present the ring against this statement about the internal damage. There would at least be damage in like the throat or the stomach or something. Let's go.
Objection!
The court has heard the ring was extracted from the victim's stomach, but you didn't actually see it being removed, did you, Professor Mikutaba? Ah, that's right. As I said in my testimony before, at that moment I was fetching a replacement scalpel that Dr. Wilson had requested. In other words, you can neither confirm nor deny whether this ring in fact really came from the victim's stomach or not. What are you suggesting, counsel? That the ring was never in the victim's stomach to begin with. It's entirely feasible that Dr. Wilson fabricated that detail about the autopsy. What are you saying? That Dr. Wilson was in possession of the ring in advance, after it was somehow stolen from Mr. Asogi. And he produced it during the procedure, pretending to have found it there and then in the victim's stomach. I wonder, did he leave the ring with the papers? Remember like the Asogi papers or something? Or are they? Yeah, I, Genshin Asogi, hereby request that upon my death, any and all material possessions and wealth belonging to me in London be delivered to my son, Kazuma, in the Empire of Japan. It is with deep sadness that I accepted my fate in this foreign land, and the knowledge that I will never see my homeland or family again, but I regret nothing but my chosen path. Okay. They probably took it from there, I would assume.
Objection!
Supposition at best. What possible evidence do you have to support such a rash claim? This evidence, right here. That's the autopsy report. It's explicit in that report, counsel. Other than the ring, nothing unusual was noted internally, so I'm not sure how you intend to prove your point. You've already done it for me, my lord. The lack of internal injury says it all. What? To swallow a ring of this size would require considerable effort and determination. And in addition to its size, there are the sharp claws around the gemstone to contend with. My brother was a determined man, and on the brink of death even more so, I'm sure. He would have stopped at nothing to ensure that evil killer was brought to justice. But if he really had swallowed that enormous ring, it's inconceivable that no traces of its passage down his throat would have remained as internal trauma. No. And there you've arrived at the sticking point. That's precisely why I had my doubts about the findings myself 10 years ago. Why didn't you say something at the time? I did. I still remember the conversation I had with Dr. Wilson in the laboratory that day. Look at this! Now this is a very curious thing to find in a man's stomach, wouldn't you say? But isn't that rather peculiar, Dr. Wilson? What's that now, Mikutaba? Well, if he swallowed a ring of that size with those sharp metal claws that it has, sure you'd expect to see damage to the throat and esophagus, torn mucous membranes at the very least. Dr. Mikutaba, may I remind you that I have vastly more experience than you. I'm terribly sorry. I can think of plenty of ways to explain why no injuries would be seen. No, let's say this. The victim would appear to have ingested the item as evidence to identify his assailant. Go ahead, write it down. So I was right. Dr. Wilson deliberately fabricated the results of the autopsy to implicate my father. He was even set up? Yeah. I'm disappointed, counsel. That argument is nothing more than speculation. What? Dr. Wilson was Britain's leading authority on forensic science and autopsy work. There is no scientific basis on which to doubt the man's expert opinion. Pardon the interruption, my lord, but Damage to the mucous membranes of the throat is easily identified even in living subjects. Using a device called an endoscope, recently demonstrated in practical use in France. I want one. The government can pay. I don't think so. And Dr. Gorey, rest assured that your removal of evidence from the stores without permission will not go unpunished. We open up the dead to find the truth. I beg your pardon? But Mama, she chose to stitch her corpses up, with all her secrets inside. That's wrong. Dr. Gorey. It's looking as though she's chosen to walk a different path to your Mama. Let's go. Recruiter. Yes. The ring. What about the ring? I've just remembered something. An earlier incident. What incident? The one I recounted to you before. About a memory I have. Of Genshin Asugi saving my life. Yeah, that's the picture. It was so it was a younger version of Barok in that picture, not Genshin. Or not Clint. Yeah, we saw the picture, and we can see the ring in the picture. What? My father saved your life? It was 10 years ago, on a foggy night. Genshin and I were walking down some back streets at a late hour. All of a sudden... Omega Pete, you're coming with us! Yeah, there's the ring. All of our assailants were armed with pistols, their faces obscured by scarves. The next thing I knew, there was silence all around. Genshin lay on the cobbled street. Blood was seeping from his left hand. He'd shielded me. It was on the ring finger of his left hand that he used to wear that ring. Are you saying... I've always believed those thugs were after me. But now I'm starting to question if perhaps I wasn't the intended target after all. Wait, but... Genshin was arrested 2 days after that attack. And in that short interval, the decisive evidence needed to indict him was miraculously found. You're confused? Which part? So, Van Zieks has told the story before. Like, we knew about the story that he had this run-in with thingy, so yeah, so he's implying that, like, his ring was targeted, and then, like, I think the ring was taken, at least, yeah. Maybe not on that evening, because they seemingly got away, but yes, I believe the ring was taken from him and planted as evidence. Yeah, there's like a whole conspiracy to set him up. So Genshin may have never done any of this, because all his friends were, like, very unsuspect. Like, they didn't suspect it, which is true of a lot of, like, real life killers. But that's just terrible. If an innocent man was, like, just set up. Yeah. So if he wasn't the professor, who was? Is Strongheart not just the Reaper, but is he also the professor from 10 years ago? You mean the ring was stolen from him? You think that's what those thugs were after that night?
Objection!
You're busy getting them to collect them like Infinity Stones, huh? You pathetic coward. You expect me to believe that you weren't involved? What do you mean by that? It was you, wasn't it? You're the one who took it. You stole my father's ring. You set the whole thing up so you could paint him as a mass murderer and have him arrested. Kazuma. Open your eyes. Have I missed everything, Emmy? A lot. Rinosuke. What's the TLDR? So we started today with... Oh, fuck, okay. So, quick. So, Van Zieks was giving his recount of what he knows about the Reaper. He claimed he has no connection to Dr. John H. Wilson or Gregson. We pointed out that was false because Dr. John H. Wilson signed off on his brother and Van Zieks' brother's autopsy report, and Gregson was the one who asked for the autopsy. So we proved there was a link there. Kazuma is convinced that his father was innocent, that his father was never the professor, the mass murderer, which is why his father was put to death. Kazuma believes his father was innocent and that he was set up, and everything about the trial was a sham, and evidence was falsified to convict his father instead of who the real killer. And Kazuma told us that when he went on the ship with Gregson the day before Gregson died, he asked Gregson if it was true that there was falsified evidence, and Gregson said there was falsified evidence at the time, and that they did it to protect the integrity of the British Empire, and he would take the details to his death. And that's why Kazuma attacks him, damages his sword. So Kazuma accuses Van Zieks of still being the Reaper, because there were 3 people involved in his father's sentencing, basically. The prosecutor, the coroner, and the inspector. Gregson, Dr. John H. Wilson, and Van Zieks was the prosecutor. So Kazuma says that, Van Zieks, as the prosecutor, you were the one who set up all this falsified evidence, so you were in charge of everything. And that the other 2 members of that trio, Gregson and John Wilson, are now dead. So Van Zieks is the only one left. But Van Zieks refuted it. He said I didn't do it. So he says to Kazuma, you saying that, I now know who the Reaper is. And Ryunosuke also realizes that he has an idea of who it is as well. And we accused Strongheart, because Strongheart would be the one that had the position to do that, and it went through. And it's also what Van Zieks thinks. Van Zieks also thinks it's Strongheart, because the original prosecutor of the Professor case wasn't Van Zieks, it was Strongheart. So that's where all the falsified evidence would have come from. Van Zieks was only the prosecutor of the Professor case because he asked for it after his brother got killed. So he would have been given all the falsified evidence. He didn't know about it. Strongheart has refused it outright. And he won't accept Gregson saying that evidence was falsified because Gregson's dead and can't testify. So Strongheart was trying to call it all off and end the whole thing. Then Sholmes showed up and said he had brought Mikotaba because, well, he said there was more to do, there was more evidence to uncover, and that there was one more person at the autopsy of Clint Van Zieks, the Professor's final victim, that could prove some more truths here. And the other person who was at the autopsy was Sasato's dad, who wrote the autopsy report, and he was the assistant to Dr. Wilson at the time. And so the Strongheart's right, well, after about a load of grumbling and the whole gallery telling him to testify, or to allow the to testify, Strongheart tried to get a recess, and Sholmes is like, no, I brought Mikotaba with us, let's get him in. So he has come in now, along with Maria Gori, the Dr. Scythe's daughter, who we spoke to earlier in this adventure, who's the current coroner after her mother her mother got into some issues a couple of adventures ago. Maria's good though, we like her. So we have found out that so Clint Van Zieks was the last victim of the Professor, although he died in a different way to the 4 previous victims of the Professor case. The 4 previous victims were all killed by some sort of dog, whereas Clint was stabbed. And in Clint's stomach during the autopsy, they found a decisive piece of evidence that they used to convict Genshin Asugi. And it was Genshin's ring. He had a red ring with big claws on it. But there's no other sign of internal damage. So the idea was that Clint swallowed the ring to convict his killer. But there's no other internal damage, which if you see the ring, it's a big bastard of a thing with 3 claws. It would have done some damage. And Mikotaba is now saying that he doesn't believe, he didn't see the moment the ring was pulled from the stomach. He was asked to look away to get a scalpel. And when he looked back, Dr. Wilson had found the ring. So he believes that the ring was fabricated as well, that the ring was stolen and found in the stomach to implicate Genshin. So it seems that Gregson falsified evidence, Dr. Wilson falsified evidence. So there's basically, it seems like everything was falsified to convict Kazuma's dad, and then he might have been innocent. So very likely innocent. And you basically hear where we are now. So Van Zieks is on the stand, Mikotaba's on the stand, and Maria Gori's on the stand. They're all evil. Yeah, it's not looking good. Very bad. Ryunosuke, you must know deep down, the truth can be completely obscured even when your judgment is only slightly clouded. But at the moment... Hey, Charlie. At the moment, you seem to be floundering through a dense fog. Is that why you were so insistent I should be present in this trial? To see you like this... Well, this is an amusing spectacle. What a grandiose expression on your face, as if you were Lady Justice herself. It seems you've thoroughly convinced yourself of this alleged fabrication of the autopsy results. So much so that you're apparently blind to the blatant contradiction that would be born out of it. What? Oh, it's extremely hard to believe. Let us imagine that there was some misconduct during the autopsy. If that were the case, why would Asugi not have disputed the findings in his trial? Oh. In the closed court hearing 10 years ago, the defendant never once denied the claims against him. Isn't that right, Lord Van Zieks? Yes, that is indeed correct. Upon hearing the verdict of guilty, he merely closed his eyes, quietly accepting the judgment. The actions of a man who has accepted responsibility for his deeds and is resigned to his fate. But then... Oh my, that is very strange. If Mr. Asugi did nothing to oppose the charges against him, then... that would surely mean there was no fabricated evidence. An obvious conclusion at which you should have arrived many minutes ago, Prosecutor Asugi. Your twisted loyalty and clouded judgment are hampering your ability for logical thought. Ah! It's very fluffy in my room, sorry. Genshin Asugi's silence at his hearing can mean only one thing. There was no fabrication of evidence during the autopsy of his final victim 10 years ago. Ah! Ugh. It's fun because we're like working with Kazuma on this. We worked with Van Zieks occasionally too. But if that autopsy was all above board, there would nothing to stop Lord Strongheart bringing this trial to an immediate conclusion.
Objection.
No, Van Zieks, let's go. That was Kazuma. I thought it was Van Zieks' voice. Thank you, Ryunosuke. If it wasn't for your frank words just now, this trial may very well have ended prematurely. Kazuma. What's this latest absurdity, Counsel? My lord. Your reasoning is perfectly sound. But for one giant hole... I beg your pardon? You claim my father's silence was due to the fact that there was no fabricated evidence. But there's another possible explanation. You've overlooked the possibility that he had a reason for maintaining that silence.
Objection!
There's Van Zieks, okay. Silence that would lead to him being convicted and sent to his death. I got a sneeze coming on. Sorry. If the autopsy results were an invention, there's no conceivable reason why the man wouldn't have protested.
Objection!
Oh, Those results were an invention, alright. There's no question of that. Or are you forgetting that 2 people with a connection to that autopsy have been assassinated? If I force the grievances I feel from my mind, I start to see you in a very different light. I think perhaps it's you who's been living in delusion these 10 years. Me? Was Clint the Reaper? Well, it's just a theory. I don't know. Kazuma-sama has created one last chance for us here, Mr. Naruhodo. A game theory. If we can show there was a reason for his father's silence in his trial, a reason why the man would have said nothing even though he was innocent. That's just a random thing I threw out there. Don't pay any heed to it. Because there's the whole thing about the dog. I don't know about the dog yet. Could it have been part of some negotiation, perhaps? Enough rhetoric. The court must be shown evidence. What proof do you have that could possibly explain Asuki's silence in court? The Asuki papers, maybe? How old is Van Zieks? He's in his 30s, I think. What proof do you have that could possibly explain Asuki's silence in court? That's right, we either have other superficial external wounds indicative of a duel. On Genshin, that is. Could it be the papers? No, wasn't right. This is the defense answer to that question. Nope. Now we can take the L. It's fine. You could have at least accompanied that penalty with an explanation of why that answer was wrong. If Kazuma-sama's father knew that the evidence being used to convict him was fabricated, why would he have said nothing in his trial? If it were me, I'd have protested my innocence until I was blue in the face. So if we're right about the autopsy results, there must have been a strong reason for his silence. Well then, perhaps he was saying nothing in exchange for some sort of clemency? Ah, that could be it. My lord, the defense would like to... Enough rhetoric. The court must be shown evidence. Some sort of clemency? Yeah, we have this here, the additional notes. The recent scarlet ink stains visible on the little and ring finger to the right of hand, but no document and corresponding ink was found. I think that's the letters, right? The last will and testament. Is it this? Is it Karama? Like Karama will be passed on, maybe?
Take that!
Nope. Explain his silence in court. I assume they would have brought up the ring in the court. What proof do you have that could possibly explain his silence in court? Did he know about this? We saw Kazuma's name or something?
Take that!
No. Bum 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 bum. So that's part of Gregson's pocket watch. That's the evacuation drill. That's Karama, the charm, the passport. Gregson's trunk, the papers. What proof do you have that could possibly explain Asugi's silence in court? Time of death, 31st of May, between 9 PM and midnight. Death from a single stab wound to the heart, other superficial external wounds indicative of a duel. Additional notes, recent scarlet ink stains visible on the little and ring fingers of the right hand, but no document and corresponding ink was found. Vital evidence recovered from the victim's stomach during autopsy. Credit to Inspector Gregson for petitioning so doggedly for the autopsy procedure. No internal trauma noted anywhere in the body. Could it have been part of some negotiation, perhaps? Really, the ring's fully examined, right? Ryunosuke's gonna prick himself again, yep. Almost like a Resident Evil item. You would twist the wee dial here and the claws would go and you would get the jewel out and you put it under a door or something like that. Is there something on the autopsy report?
Take that!
No. So what does Iris say here again? If Kazuma's father knew that the evidence being used to convict him was fabricated, why would he have said nothing in his trial? If it were me, I would have protested my innocence until I was blue in the face. So if we're right about the autopsy results, there must have been a strong reason for his silence. Well then perhaps he was saying nothing in exchange for some sort of clemency. Clemency's like being let off on something, right? Yeah, like leniency. Yeah, yeah. This is Gregson's autopsy. I'm thinking like what evidence pertains to the professor case, but is it Kazuma's armband? But it's very specifically Kazuma's. He didn't want to affect Kazuma's career or something like that. I wonder if it's Kazuma's armband.
Take that!
Fuck, man. All my ideas are like crumbling now. Fuck. We really don't have a lot here. This is the jailbreak. Photo of Mrs. Vigil, the candle, the policeman, the gun, the hairpiece, the Gregson's photo. Gregson's autopsy, crime scene, the notice board, the firecrackers, Gregson's death photo, pocket watch, the ID, this horrifying photo, the papers, the trunk, Clint's report, the passport, the charm, Karama, the drill, the component, the telegram, and the ring.
Take that!
We already presented the ring, didn't we? Yeah, we did. Tricky. And yes, I could go through and present everything, just like, duh, it was wrong, it was wrong, it was wrong. Where's the... That's no fun. says Kazuma's name, right? Yeah. Very fine embroidery here to choose the name of the armband's owner. In this case, Kazuma Asugi. So I'm always carrying my best friend's hopes and dreams with me on my right arm just here. All the time. To be honest, it's something that weighs very heavily on me. Oh, I didn't realize it was such a burden, Mr. Naruto. Yes, I think it's why my right shoulder aches so much. Are you sure that's not to do with you reading in bed or the like? So these are all the things about the this is the Reaper, this isn't to do with the Professor. Is it something to do with Gregson?
Take that!
No. Oops, didn't click it. We've done the armband, we've done the papers, we've done Clint's report, we've done Karuma, we've done the ring, we've done the telegram. So the component, the little crown is left. The article about the Red-Headed League. Yeah, I'm having a look through here. And like thinking like, what relation could they have had? This wouldn't matter because this is recent. This wasn't 10 years ago. Mr. Vigil. I can't even look at the people right now. No dismissal because he aided in the jailbreak. Leap time. Oh no. Maybe something VOD for you, Niddlin. I don't think we're gonna finish tonight. I think it was ambitious. No spoilies, Farrell, remember? If you figure it out. Alarm early tomorrow so you can shower. No time today, that's fair. Yeah, prefer evening shower myself as well. I also like prefer getting like cooked in my showers. I don't like none of this like lukewarm shower shit thing. See you later and have a nice sleep. Green the screen. Oh, sorry. Oops, sorry. I can't remember where we got the will from. The last will and testament that Mr. Vigil claimed disappeared after the convict's execution. Can't remember who gave them to us, but we got them anyway. proof to explain his silence. Oh, I was like, what's this chatter about something Gregson had on? But it's because we examined the box. I start to see you in a very different light. Is it the picture of Van Zieks, maybe?
Take that!
I'm fucking out of options now. Sure. I'll take a hint. Do you think it's something in the dismissal notice? I've read it. See, I can't remember how this lines up. With his actual trial and stuff. Are you thinking it's a dismissal notice? Indication or conceived that the jailbreak plot was conceived prior to the convict's incarceration. Believe that the convict engaged in some form of negotiation with prison staff in order to secure assistance. Full disclosure information regarding the negotiation will be demanded. For the try.
Take that!
Nope. Oh, there you go. There you go. It didn't do the music shut off, so it's like he stayed silent because he knew he'd just break out. Fair. Yeah. Shuda Genshin Asugi's silence during his trial resulted in his conviction. But that didn't actually lead to his execution. On the contrary. Yeah, good job. It led to his escape. An escape that was only possible because he'd been sentenced to death. I think I missed that line about, like, prior to his incarceration. I was like, when would this have even taken place? Although I find it hard to believe my father would have negotiated in that way, the defense is correct. A fake execution, falsification of a death certificate, and a jailbreak inside a coffin. Clearly such an elaborate plan couldn't have been carried out by my father alone. He must have had the help of a collaborator from the judiciary. I have here the dismissal notice of the chief warder who was working in the prison at the time. The notes read, there are indications that the jailbreak was in planning prior to the inmate's incarceration. Yeah, that's the line my eyes just went, whoop, and passed. In other words, there were suggestions of some sort of negotiation between Mr. Asugi and the British government. In exchange for his silence in court, he was given an assurance that he would be broken out of prison. Yes, with that sort of clandestine agreement in place, I can imagine he would have kept very quiet. But then he was shot. I would go further than that, in fact. I would say that the elaborate jailbreak of Mr. Asugi can be explained in no other way. Order, order! First fabricated evidence and now a jailbreak conspiracy. Of course, because it's all intimately linked. The prosecution wishes to summon new witnesses to the stand. Witnesses? People who can testify about the jailbreak that took place 10 years ago. Governor Caden? And the poor chief warder of the prison. I won't allow this trial to turn into a farce. To summon the governor of the prison after all these years. Oh, it wouldn't be any trouble, my lord. He's outside, doesn't he? Father? My dear friend may appear a little rattle-pated at time, but I can assure you he's extremely thorough. He wired both Barclay and the local prison earlier, asking Governor Caden and Mr. Vigil to attend the Old Bailey as a matter of extreme urgency. Mr. Sholmes did that? He did go off to prepare. Are you telling me that... Both men are, unless I'm much mistaken, waiting just outside the courtroom at this very moment. Let's go. My lord, you must permit this trial to proceed as you declared at its outset. You promised that we would stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Very well. Bring in the witnesses. Make no mistake. I, too, would like nothing more than to lay this business to rest once and for all. I bet you would. Alright, here comes Caden and Vigil again. Yep, there they are. And Van Zieks, okay. Would the new witnesses state their names and occupations for the court, please? Aye, Barry Caden, Governor of Barclay Prison. Everyone calls me Gossip. I sell jaunty little tidbits to passers-by. Your other persona, if you don't mind. Oh, I do beg your pardon. Of course. My name is Daily Vigil. I used to be the chief warder at Barclay Prison. Now is the ring going to come up. Keep an eye if you ever see Daly's hands. The reason you've been summoned here to court today. Yeah, he's Gossip, yeah. Is to testify about the jailbreak of the so-called professor 10 years ago. Yeah, this is the final adventure of the 2 games. Because there's no third game, so... Lost, the professor! We've already been through all this before, a decade ago. And the conclusion was that there wasn't anything untoward happened. A convict escaped from your prison, Governor. Hardly what you call nothing untoward. Well... The convict's death certificate was somehow falsified after he was allegedly executed. And he escaped the prison inside his own coffin. A plan of that complexity could never have been carried out without the help of somebody of influence inside the prison. Governor Caden, don't imagine that the passage of time will afford you any protection. Sorry, I'm getting fucking irritated about everything in my room right now. If it turns out that you were involved in the plot to break Mr. Asako out of your prison, then of course, well, we've got the dismissal notice, right, that it was Daly that did it. The consequences will be very serious. In all likelihood, capital punishment. Gas, hold on there, laddie. All I did was... Witness, Governor Caden. Aye, sir. You have a critical role to play in the public safety of our country. Hey. A great responsibility to shoulder. The significance of your testimony in court cannot be understated. Therefore, think carefully before you speak. And Prosecutor Asogi, if you threaten the witness again, you will be held in contempt of court. My apologies, my lord. There's no disputing the fact that an intricate jailbreak plot was enacted 10 years ago. Clearly, you're both involved in some way. So you will testify before the court now and explain exactly what took place. Very well. Let the witnesses give their formal testimony. Tell the court everything you know of the plot to break Asogi out of Barclay 10 years ago. Okay, let's go. The jailbreak plot. It was the day that Japanese jock was found guilty. The directive came from the prosecutor's office. I signed the convict to the chief warder Vigil here and put the plan into action behind the scenes. Oh, it's a different ring. Okay. You can see it now. It is a different ring. I was responsible for Asogi right up until the night of his execution, but I knew nothing of any plot. Unless the one we have is like fake or something. The cute ring, yeah. I didn't care if there were some negotiations behind the convict and the prosecutor's office. All I did was carry out my duty for Her Majesty's Great British Empire. There's a whole plot, Tim. Everyone's involved. A director from the prosecutor's office. Are you saying that was the jailbreak plot? Aye, that's right. Who sent it? Who authorized that plan? I don't ken that. You're saying you don't know? Listen, there wasn't a thing about that professor case that wasn't unusual in some way. I didn't ask any questions. I just did what I was told to do. More than that, I couldn't tell you. I see. But if the jailbreak plan originated from the prosecutor's office, then one thing is very clear. As suspected, there were clandestine dealings going on between Mr. Asugi and that office. The jailbreak was promised in exchange for Mr. Asugi admitting to crimes he didn't commit. That, counsel, is nothing more than speculation on your part. It's like they were trying to just execute the professor, so whoever it really was could just get away, seemingly. So, let me ask the defense. Oh, yes, my lord. I fail to see how these witnesses have any more pertinent information here. Do you intend to assert your right to a cross-examination? Absolutely. I have no intention of squandering a single opportunity, my lord. Seems all you Japanese are fiercely tenacious. Very well. Proceed, counsel. Let's go. And it was the day the Japanese jock was found guilty. The directive came from the prosecutor's office.
Hold it!
And you say you don't know who actually issued the directive? Aye, that's right. All I can be sure of is that it was official. In case we can get reactions as well. But it was from the prosecutor's office. That narrows down who could have issued it straight away. And it wasn't me. I can't even say with certainty that it did originate from the prosecutor's office. But there's no telling where it started. There's a fair chance it came from higher up the ladder. Basically. I can't give you any indication of who was behind it. Can't be serious. All we can say for sure is that the order must have come from somebody in authority, I suppose. The likes of us on the ground, as it were. If any bother was idle speculation, we just get the job done. Okay, nothing there. I assigned the convict to the chief warder vigil here and put the plan into action behind the scenes.
Hold it!
Okay. So, Mr. Vigil, you didn't know anything about it at all? That's right. My only role in this scheme was as a scapegoat. And he was fired for it too. That's right, isn't it, Governor? Oof. Some poor beggar had to take the rap for it. Alright then. Who else did know about the plan? I've no the first idea, laddie. My part in the whole business was basically just dealing with the aftermath. I wouldn't be surprised if there were other folk in the prison service who'd been given similar orders. So we don't know who else was involved. Aye, that's right. All I can tell you is that the night it actually happened, the person at the reins was Dr. Stevens. Dr. Courtney Stevens. Or Dr. Scythe, as she's known now. Huh. Why did I have to get caught up in such a terrible business? Rip, huh? I was responsible for Asugi right up until the night of his execution, but I knew nothing of any plot.
Hold it!
Did you not notice anything unusual happening in the lead up to that night? Oh, everything was unusual. Exception after exception. After all, it was the professor. The man had terrorized the country as never before with his crimes. In order to hide his identity, he was forced to wear an iron mask over his head. Hideous treatment. The fellow was surprisingly docile for someone who had taken the lives of 5 of the country's nobles. Being the chief warder, I was the only person permitted to approach his cell. I can still hardly believe that I was duped by my own country. I believe you jumped from the window of the governor's office when the jailbreak was blamed on you, didn't you? Freddy did, yeah. Losh, Vigil. I Can I apologize enough? No, Governor. I don't believe you can. It won't change what's happened. And what else can you tell us about the situation, Governor Caden? Ugh. Right. Second last statement. I don't know if there were some negotiations between the convicts and the prosecutor's office.
Hold it!
But you've already acknowledged that orders came from the prosecutor's office to arrange for the man's escape. There must have been some sort of negotiation. That's the only explanation. Aye, well, be that as it may, I didn't ken nothing about that. The witness stand is no place for telling what you don't know for sure. I ken that much, I do. Then I presume you also know this. Not telling what you do know is a criminal offense. So, you were just following orders, is that it? I'm afraid that won't absolve you of guilt here. A man was still killed illegally, even if he was a condemned criminal. You may very well be found complicit in murder, Governor. Tell us the truth. So that's what it's to be, is it? Even with the threat of conviction, you won't break your silence. All I did was carry out my duty for Her Majesty's Great British Empire. That's what they're all saying. That's what Gregson said. That's what he's saying. Did you carry out the plan in its entirety? Aye. I did everything I could at the time. As you know, Genshin Asugi was shot dead in Lowgate Cemetery after the escape. Tell me, was that part of the plan too? My instructions were to do with getting the jock out of the jail and nothing more. I cannot tell you anything about what happened after that. Only, personally, I believe his death was the last part of the plan. Oh. What does it all mean?
Excuse me.
Mr. Vigil? Mr. Vigil, is something wrong? Yes, sir. What can I do for you, sir? He's saluting now. But is this some sort of Barclay convention? What Governor Caden was just saying seemed to upset you. Did it bring something to mind, perhaps? For the last 10 years, I've completely blotted out the memories of that time from my mind. I was betrayed by my superiors in the name of my country. Yeah, he got fucked, he got really thrown under the bus. Just as my father was betrayed, it seems. But you see, thinking back now, I really can't imagine that the shooting of Mr. Asugi in the cemetery was ever part of the plan. What makes you think that? Well, it just doesn't make sense, does it? To make the man admit to crimes he didn't commit with the promise of a jailbreak, only to kill him in the end. That's treachery of the worst kind. But the point is that the intention was always to betray him. Why would there be any need for all the chicaneries of an escape? Okay, buddy, chicanery. Yes, that's quite true. If whoever negotiated with Asugi never intended to keep his or her end of the bargain, it would have been far simpler just to let the man be executed in prison as dictated by his sentence. It all happened in the vast chamber of secrets that is Barclay, behind the high prison walls. I suppose nobody knows what really went on in the execution room now. Yes, it's an unsettling mystery, certainly. Truth be told, there is a wee matter that's never quite made sense to me. Oh? If you believe there was some kind of negotiation behind the jailbreak, between Asugi and a body at the top, it doesn't quite add up, does it? Governor Caden, I must insist that you explain these doubts that you have. By amending your formal testimony. Gads! Aye, go on then. What does he say? It seems to me that the Japanese fella didn't have nothing to bargain with.
Hold it!
Interesting. Admitting to the crimes, that was what he had to bargain with, surely. Can't see that myself. After all, did the prosecution not have conclusive evidence against the Carly, eh? This, you mean? discovered during the final victim's autopsy. There's every possibility this conclusive evidence was fabricated by Scotland Yard and the prosecutor's office.
Objection!
Possibilities are all very well, but nothing has been proven. You can holler about misconduct in the trial 10 years ago all you like. But if you can't establish that it happened with hard evidence, no one's going to listen. Aye, that's right. So what I'm saying is, the convict had nothing. Nothing he could use for any kind of bargaining at all. The witness makes an astute point. Logically, it would seem no negotiation could have taken place. And yet the plan to break the man out of prison was definitely put into practice. So he must have been armed with something that gave him an angle to negotiate. The papers, probably, right? His last weapon, right? So Asuki-san agreed to confess to the crimes because he was assured he'd be broken out of prison later. I really don't think that Kazuma-sama's father would have engaged in such negotiations. That perhaps something compelled him to agree. What a terrible thing, using the law to legitimize such underhand dealings with a desperate man, only to double-cross him in the end. It's quite the opposite of justice. I can't help feeling there's something about this apparent negotiation that doesn't quite add up. Something doesn't quite add up, Mr. Naruhodo. No, it doesn't, but I can't quite put my finger on what yet. Well, in that case, we must keep digging until we identify the problem. Supposedly his papers went missing, didn't they? And they also say, like, they're like his last weapon, and there was a thing about being armed, so... What do the papers say? The last will and testament of Genshin Asugi that Mr. Vigil claims disappeared after the convict's execution. Apparently Mr. Asugi described it as the only weapon I have left. I, Genshin Asugi, hereby request that upon my death, any and all material possessions and wealth belonging to me in London be delivered to my son, Kazuma Asugi, in the Empire of Japan. It is with deep sadness that I accept my fate in this foreign land and the knowledge that I will never see my homeland or family again, but I regret nothing about my chosen path. Well, he had wealth, right? He seems to have had possessions.
Objection!
Confessing under oath to murders he didn't commit, on a verbal assurance of later being broken out of prison. Genshin Asugi was taking an incredibly risky gamble. Very true. There was nothing to stop the British breaking their word and executing him behind closed doors anyway. Under normal circumstances, no man would stake his life on a gentleman's agreement like that. Which means that Mr. Asugi must have had a trump card. Something that guaranteed he wouldn't be betrayed. Some kind of weapon. Others. The fella couldn't have possibly have had anything like that. But you know that he did, Governor. The Asugi papers. The name given to the last will and testament of Genshin Asugi. Ah! It turns out that Mr. Asugi was hiding his will in his cell at Barclay. Chief Warder Vigil caught him with it one day. You squealed, did you, wee rat? Did I not tell you to keep that a secret? You can't touch me now. Gah! When Mr. Vigil caught sight of that will through the bars of the convict's cell, Mr. Asugi pleaded with the warder. Alright then, but what's on that paper? A last will and testament. This will is the only weapon I have left now. A weapon? And after the convict had been killed following the elaborate pretense of the jailbreak, that document mysteriously disappeared, didn't it? Well, yes. All the prison warders searched through the belongings in his cell, but that will was just nowhere to be found. I can't remember where we got it. As I understand it, an exhaustive search was made for the document, which became known as the Asugi Papers. Governor Caden, I believe you ordered your prison staff to find it at all costs, didn't you? Eh? Would I be right in saying that you knew that the so-called Asugi Papers had the potential to make great waves somehow? Jinx, what the blazes are you blathering about? The will was found, right and proper. In the fella's cell where I said it would be. But how can that be? Where in his cell? We all searched the place from top to bottom. Well, you didn't do a proper job, you peely-wally gallant. You can't criticize me now. I showed it to you afore, did I know, you young lawyer? Okay, it's him who showed it. How did Asugi die? Genshin, so Genshin was set up to be executed. It was all a sham. He was put in his coffin. He broke out of the coffin at night. And as he was getting out of the coffin, he was shot. And that's what Enoch Drebber saw. That's what the waxwork was, if you remember. It was the waxwork of Enoch Drebber and the professor like climbing out of the grave. He was shot at night and killed. That's why Daily Vigil's saying, like, well, Caden is saying that must have been the final part of the plan. And then Daily Vigil saying, why would we do this elaborate jailbreak if we were just going to kill him anyway? So, I don't think we know who shot him. No. So, Governor Caden had given us the Asugi papers. That's where we got them. Yes, you did. I have the document here. It's written in Japanese and reads, "The last will and testament of Genshin Asugi." Which means everything is as it should be. Not quite, my lord. You see, there's an undeniable inconsistency here. What inconsistency? Mr. Asugi describes this document as the only weapon he had left. And yet this will contains nothing of significance at all. Nothing that would have given the convict any leverage. Are you suggesting, my learned friend, that the last will and testament stored at Barclay Prison all these years is actually a fake? As has clearly been demonstrated already. What went on at Barclay Prison was far from above board. They faked his will? That last vilification by the defense was an affront to the entire British legal system. This absurd notion of a weapon is something for which we have only the former Chief Warder's word. So Genshin said the thing about it being my only weapon left. So the document isn't correlating. There's nothing decisive in it, really. Fuck off, Strongheart. Yup. The man could quite easily be lying, or at the very least, sorely mistaken. Well, no, I definitely heard him say that. I swear. Clearly, we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to know exactly what happened with these so-called Asugi papers. A waste of time. If the will was fake, where is the real document? Mr. Vigil was stabbed in the back by the judiciary 10 years ago. He lost everything. Very nearly his own life. And now you're going to do it again. You're ready to brand him a liar and turn your back on him without even letting him defend himself. It's clear the Barclay Prison is hiding something. It's clear the jailbreak was masterminded by somebody in the prosecutor's office. It's clear that some illicit negotiations took place. Is your lordship just going to gloss over those incomprehensible facts? What did you just say? We should hear more from the Chief Warder. Have him testify again. The trial must go on. The man's voice must be heard. It would seem that a vocal few here are utterly blind to the truth. Very well then. Let the witness testify again. Tell the court precisely what you think you saw of the convict's last will and testament. Yeah. Yes, sir, my lord. Alright. New testimony from Daly. The Asugi papers, I assume. Yep. As the warder responsible for condemned convicts, I attended to Mr. Asugi and kept watch over his cell. The night after he was found guilty in court, he was doing something with that will in his cell. We turned the cell inside out looking for it after the execution, but to no avail. I only found out about the Asugi papers when a directive came telling me to impound them. The document was in the folds of the fellow's robe that was left in his cell. A kimono, I think it's called. Okay. In his kimono? That's a lie. We searched every inch of the man's cell. We looked through all his clothes. It can't be true. Are you not satisfied with calling me the liar once, eh? You wee waffinger. There's nothing you can do about it now. You don't have any hold over me anymore. Other than the hold you like to take on my cravat, of course. Is that what you're going to do, is it? Are you going to give me a good shake again? Or are you too scared? Little and large. What a double act. We complied with Asugi's will as far as was possible. All of his personal effects were delivered to his family home in Japan, as a courtesy to the homeland of the most notorious killer our country has ever seen. And we were much obliged. I can confirm that all my father's belongings arrived safely. Aye, you cannot deny the handwriting is that of your old man, eh? Yes, there's no mistaking that it's my father's brushwork. Really? And this last will and testament was the man's last weapon, was it? I think we can safely assume that the convict was merely prattling, knowing that his end was nigh. So, counsel for the defense, your cross-examination, please. Yes, my lord. Let's go. So he attended to Mr. Asugi and kept watch over his cell.
Hold it!
So would that mean that you conversed with Mr. Asugi? Yes, certainly. Though there was precious little time before his execution was due. He was remarkably calm considering his days were very much numbered. In all honesty, he really didn't strike one as a man capable of mass murder. He was set up. Yet he confessed in full to the crimes. I know. That's why I felt compelled to ask him one day. I can still recall his reply. I'm guilty of the unforgivable crime of ending another human's life, yes. But he was so tranquil and intelligent, it put me in mind of an Eastern holy man. And what about the will you saw him with? What can you tell us about that? It was the beginning of all the drama. I remember it very well, yes. Alright, next point. The night after he was found guilty in court, he was doing something with that will in his cell.
Hold it!
Okay. And he pleaded with you not to report him, didn't he? Yes, that's right. I like the bampot you are, you didn't tell me. A blatant breach of trust that was. I could see the man had a noble spirit. I found myself wanting to treat him accordingly. But according to what you told us 2 days ago, the convict had been strictly forbidden from having any writing materials whatsoever. Yes, you're quite right. So when exactly was the will penned? That was before the man was remanded in Barclay, obviously. Yes, at the prosecutor's office under suspicion of the relevant authorities. I personally instructed Asugi to make a will for the benefit of his family in his homeland. In that case, why was it found in his cell? What do you mean by that? Well, if it was penned at the prosecutor's office, you would have expected that it would remain there for safekeeping, surely. It's curious. There doesn't seem to be any obvious explanation for why it was subsequently found in the convict's cell. Oh, well. The defense makes an astute point. Well, Governor. He's sweating. A prison governor cannot be expected to ken the inner workings of the prosecutor's office. In that case, Lord Strongheart, perhaps you can shed some light on the matter. I'm unable to offer an explanation here and now. I would have to consult with the notary responsible for the will at the time. The fact that my father's will was discovered in his cell is clearly inconsistent with what was expected. I want to know why. Another inexplicable mystery, then. Well, the thing is about that will... Right, next point. We turned the cell inside out looking for it after the execution, but to no avail.
Hold it!
Did he, like, eat it or something? It was the governor who ordered the search for the will, as I understand it. Is that right? Yes. And when I reported back that we couldn't find it, he grabbed me by the cravat and yelled, "It can't have disappeared completely. in my face. Aye, well, it's down to the governor to keep everybody working as hard as they should. I think the governor needs a wee taste of his own medicine, Mr. Naruhodo. The point is, it was clearly considered a very important document, wasn't it? But it proved impossible to find. That's right. Then, before I knew it, it was in the morning paper. That blood-curdling article. The executed mass murderer who'd risen from the dead. Yes, that's the article that Enoch Drebber was mentioned in then, from the other 2 adventures ago, I think. Oh, you mean the article based on Mr. Drebber's experience in Lowgate Cemetery? That one, yeah. Yes, that was it. The day after I'd read that news, I was summoned to the governor's office. And that's when the awful accusation was made. That you'd aided Genshin Asugi to escape from the prison, resulting in your immediate dismissal. I'm afraid I really don't remember anything after that. As the governor of the prison, I had no choice. I couldn't have done anything else. Take the fall yourself? I only found out about the Asugi papers when a directive came telling me to impound them.
Hold it!
From the prosecutor's office, I assume? And that directive came from the same source as the one instructing you about the jailbreak? Aye. From the top levels of the prosecutor's office. What name was on it? I didn't ken afore and I didn't ken now. All I can tell you is that my orders were to do everything in my power to find that document. The directive said it had to be somewhere inside the fellow's cell. Document. Was that the wording? Document, not will. Aye, that's what it said. Am I clutching at straws here? I just wonder if it was really Genshin Asugi's last will and testament that the sender of the directive was after. Continue with your testimony then, witness. Alright, last point now. The document was in the folds of the fellow's robe that was left in his cell.
Hold it!
Okay. In Mr. Asugi's kimono? Aye. The one he'd brought with him when he was locked up. Yes, he was permitted to have his personal effects with him during his incarceration, I understand. That's right. He was granted as much freedom as possible during the few days before his execution. Indeed, he had a number of items of personal significance, I remember. He was very reluctant to part with them. Some books, that kimono, his sword. His sword? Karama, the famous sword of the Asugi clan. It bears the soul of my family. I don't doubt it, but I wasn't really getting at that. Forget it being the soul of the clan. Could the man have had a more obvious weapon? Have some respect, Ryunosuke. Respectful silence. The warders carry firearms at all times, and the inmates have shackles around their ankles. He couldn't have hurt anybody with that thing. Still, he was allowed a sword, but no writing materials? Aye. He wrote that will before he came to stay with us at Barclay, you see. Dr. Mikotabo was asked to bring the necessary Japanese writing implements to the prosecutor's office. Suzuri inkstone, black sumi ink, and some Hanshi rice paper, no doubt. I was present when he wrote it, but I'm sorry to say, the letters just look like a squirming mess of jet black earthworms to me. No.
Excuse me!
Mr. Vigil again. Are you feeling faint, Mr. Vigil? Mr. Vigil! Sir! It was Scarlet, sir. Had the ink right. What? Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I didn't mean to blurt it out like that. Did he write it in his blood? Less swaying and more explaining would be helpful. Is it something about the testimony we just heard? Have you recalled something of importance? Something of importance? Possibly, or possibly not. I'm unable to tell which way he's leaning, I'm afraid. My lord, the defense asks that Mr. Vigil be permitted to supplement his testimony with this possibly or possibly not important detail. Permission granted. Go ahead, Mr. Vigil. Yes, it was Scarlet. As I remember it, the document was written in scarlet ink, but perhaps I'm mistaken. What's this one written in then? Black? Well, this one's black ink. So...
Hold it!
press him anyway. Scarlet, you say? Well, yes. I mean, I only caught sight of it for a brief moment, of course. But even by the dim light in the cell, I remember thinking that it was an unusual color. At the very least. I'm quite sure it wasn't black. Witness. Did he, like, prick his finger on the sword? For ink? I wouldn't... But you say... I would say blood is more like a crimson, but... I don't know. Is that really what you saw? Well, sir. Is something wrong, Lord Strongheart? I apologize. Continue. What do you make of that, Mr. Naruhodo? For Lord Strongheart to be so visibly shaken in that way. Oh, there you have her. You can plainly see the writing here, and it's as black as the Earl of Hell's waistcoat. Well, yes, you're right. Mr. Vigil, I'd like to confirm one point with you. Did you actually see the content of the document that Mr. Astley was holding that night? Oh, well, no. I mean, there was no time. As soon as he noticed me there, he hid it behind his back. It was definitely a will, was it? Yes, it was. That's what Mr. Astley told me. The court need waste no further time on this matter. We have the will in question in our possession. There is nothing more to add. A will written in scarlet ink. What did Mr. Vigil really see Kazuma's father holding, I wonder? Did he write something on Karuma? Maybe not. What's under this, I wonder? If you have an inkling, Mr. Naruhodo, you must present it to the court at once. Is there a small metal bit on the circle? I was like, the testimony doesn't give much away. So this will really was penned by Kazuma-sama's father. I wonder what he could possibly have meant when he described it as a weapon. It's starting to sound very much like Mr. Asui actually had nothing. But the plan to break him out of jail went ahead, which means he must have had some bargaining power. He must have been hiding something. It's the only explanation that makes sense. Is there something like inside the Karuma? Maybe like you can screw the bottom of it off or something like that? It's starting to sound like Mr. Asui actually might have had something. Which isn't Mr. Naruhodo. I'm not sure, but I feel as though I'm on the brink of understanding all this. Let's listen to all the information again and see what more we can learn. We can't overlook even the smallest detail. Absolutely. But you can only have certain things in with them. I wonder if there's something hidden somewhere on Karuma. Something red around Banzix's hand? Shadow using Feral? Oh. Yeah, he had, he did have, like, red on his fingers, I think? Seen what he was actually holding. Well, I think the autopsy report said that it was around. It was around. Yeah, Clint's fingers. Yeah. Where was it? Red scarlet ink stains visible on the little and ring fingers of the right hand, but no document and corresponding ink was found. So that's Clint, right? Yeah. Ah, fuck. They made tab one too many. Yeah, Clem's already dead at this stage, yeah. Also, Pickles, if your first message, just, like, try not to hint at anything, you know, unless asked. I know you're not intending to do anything, like, but just in case. Yeah, it does seem weird for it to be anything on Clint if we're looking at Genshin's body. The document was written in scarlet ink. We don't have anything written in red, do we? No, it's all in black. Could also just be the text the game is using. But... Yeah, why would... Why would Clint's hand have the scarlet on it? The vigil is saying that he looked into the cell and he could see Genshin writing something in scarlet. But why would it be on Clint's fingers? I attended to Mr. Asuki and kept watch over his cell. The night after he was found guilty in court, he was doing something with that will in his cell. We turned the cell inside out looking for it after the execution, but to no avail. Oops, sorry. So is it possible that the document... He wasn't writing anything new? Maybe he was looking at a document that had already been written by Clint? Is that possible? So there was a document written in the prosecutor's office, right? Under observation. And we think that's the... So there's a real one and there's a fake one. There was a document written when he wasn't in prison. So... Maybe Clint wrote a document and Genshin had that document? Maybe. It's the only reference we have to Scarlet, so
Objection.
We'll bring it up anyway. Scarlet colored writing is what you said you thought you saw, Mr. Vigil. And I believe that's exactly what you did see. What? Havers again, you have no evidence to say that. Have a look at this report. That's my brother's autopsy report. Yes, and there's something in here that's bothered me since I first read it. It states that scarlet-colored ink stains were noted on the fingers of the victim's right hand. Yes, so it does. So, scarlet ink? No, I'm not familiar with the habits of the British aristocracy, I freely admit. But I would hazard a guess that they don't all go around with ink stains on their fingertips, do they? Your wit is not appreciated. My brother was a well-bred and fastidious man. Should ink have sullied his fingertips, he would have cleaned them immediately. What is your point, Counsel? My point is this. Whatever Lord Clint Van Zieks was writing in that unusually coloured ink, it must have been directly before his death. Because he died before he had the opportunity to clean his hands. What? I remember something troubled me at the time. At this scene, the lid of my brother's inkwell was open. Interesting. But Clint was punctilious about such things. It seemed unusual. And no document penned in the colour of the ink that was in the inkwell was ever found. So the document had disappeared. Are you suggesting that the document my father had in his hand that night in his cell was the same document that Lord Clint Van Zieks was writing moments before his death? Then, it was. If Mr. Vigil's testimony is to be believed, it can only mean that, yes, Mr. Vigil. Sir. When you spotted Mr. Askew with the document in his cell, his precise words were as follows, were they not? Alright then, but what's on that paper? A last will and testament. This will is the only weapon I have left now. He didn't say it was his will. He said, I will. A last will and testament. Ah. If the conversation really did go with Mr. Vigil says, then what we now know completely changes the meaning of what Mr. Asuki said. You really think? Mr. Vigil did indeed see the convict with the will, but it wasn't that of Genshin Asugi. It was the last will and testament of Lord Clint Van Zieks. No. What?
Objection!
This is madness, my brother's last will and testament. That would mean that he had chosen to die. That is what it would mean, yes. No, impossible. That is utterly out of the question. Lord Van Zieks. Clint was pursuing the professor. It consumed him day and night. Whatever happened, he would never have abandoned his investigation before its conclusion. Never! He wouldn't rest until the job was done. Until the killer was caught. The idea that he would willingly accept his own death, it's obscene.
Objection!
And yet, we can be sure that he was writing his will moments before his death. And that Genshin Asugi came to be in possession of that document. So, what could the will possibly have contained? Clearly something that could be made public under any circumstances whatsoever. The identity of the Reaper. Or of the Professor, sorry. Because armed with that document, my father was able to negotiate with the judiciary for his life. It was something so damning that it prompted the powers that be to enact that daring jailbreak plot. Yeah, he knew the identity of the Reaper. Who's in the Reaper? Identity of the Professor. Yes. There can be no question that in that will contained information of the utmost secrecy. Information of the utmost secrecy. No, it couldn't be. I've heard more than enough. Pursuing this notion of a phantom will nobody can attest. Which nobody can attest to having seen serves absolutely no purpose. Oh, phantom will. Okay. A phantom will nobody can attest to having seen serves absolutely no purpose.
Objection!
No, my lord. That's unacceptable. What did you say, counsel? The last will and testament that Genshin Asugi had in his possession was that of Lord Clint Van Zieks. All the testimony and evidence presented to the court has logically led us to that as a possibility. We have a duty to pursue the line of reasoning to its conclusion. But with no possible means of knowing the contents of the document, there is no line of reasoning to pursue. A reason why Lord Clint Van Zieks, a man of high noble standing, would have chosen death. Information so secret, people in the judiciary would be willing to negotiate the jailbreak of a condemned criminal. The only explanation that fits those facts is an unthinkable truth that turns absolutely everything on its head. But It's just too hideous. Mr. Naruhodo, however difficult the situation might become, you work with your client in pursuit of the truth. That's what you resolved to do when you entered the courtroom this morning, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Sato. So hold your head high and keep soldiering on. I think I've missed something. We'll see what they say. Yeah. Yes, you're right. 10 years ago, in his final moments, Lord Clint Van Zieks left behind a will. A will that Genshin Asuki was able to use as a weapon to negotiate his escape from prison. Was it like Clint, confessing to being the professor, maybe? In all probability, the details in the will were related to the professor case. The defense's last statement is mere conjecture. What are you getting at, man? Rinosuke? As soon as these words come out of my mouth, there's no going back. I believe that the last will and testament of Lord Clint Van Zieks was in fact a confession. Yep. You can do this, Mr. Naruhodo. I believe that what Lord Clint Van Zieks actually penned that day was a confession. A confession? Regarding the mass murderer known as the Professor and his true identity.
Objection!
Enough, Counsel. What are you saying? Do you even realize? A confession about the true identity of the Professor. That would mean... Lord Van Zieks, I appreciate this must be hard to take in, but it's the only explanation that fits. The killer that terrorized London a decade ago and became known as the Professor, the man believed to have murdered 5 members of the aristocracy, wasn't Genshin Asuki at all. No, you can't be suggesting. It was in fact the man believed he had been the 5th victim. Lord Clint Van Zieks himself. And my theory of murder might be right. It's finally open, is it? Pandora's box. The great Van Zieks family, they've been thoroughbreds of the British judiciary for years. And Lord Clint Van Zieks, he was a paragon of justice in the capital. But he was actually a mass murderer? A perpetrator of our atrocities of the vilest nature? If the general public ever found out, law and order in this country would be finished, I assume. My brother. Oh, this is too awful. Poor Lord Van Zieks. Van Zieks' whole thing has been hating the Japanese because his brother was killed by a Japanese man. Now his brother might have been the very murderer all along. I wonder though, did he never suspect Mr. Naruhodo? Lord Barak Van Zieks is a brilliant prosecutor. Is it conceivable that he didn't realize what his older brother really was? Order, order, order in the court. Lord Van Zieks. The Professor made use of an enormous hound as his murder weapon. Tell me, did your brother own a dog? Yes, he did. Shit. My idea was that the aristocracy would have big dogs. That's what kind of prompted my earlier theory. His vengeance-filled hatred was unfounded. Yep. Balmung. He was a well-known hunting dog. People called him a giant. I don't believe this. When my brother would go hunting in the forests of the grounds behind the house, he always took Balmung. The music's so good. This is like Van Zieks' theme, I think, right? Whatever it is, the music of this game has been fantastic. Both games. After Clint's death, the creature passed away too, almost as if he were following his master. He was a magnificent hunting dog, worthy of the jewel-studded collar around his neck. A jewel-studded collar? That's right. Though sadly, jewel-studded collar? Some years ago now, it was stolen by a thief who broke into the house one night. A jewel-studded collar, stolen by a thief. It so happens that myself and my colleagues have come across such a collar during our time in London. That's the fucking collar. I was thinking the Hound of the Baskervilles as well, actually, yeah. That's the fucking collar that, like, the two fucking bozos with the red hair were using. Fucking Daily Vigil has a big ring around his neck from it too. That's that fucking collar. How could you? There was an old emblem attached to the collar too, made of pure gold. It was topped with a small crown and bore an ornate capital letter B. What? An emblem bearing the initial B? Oh my, you know it. It's the insignia of the Baskerville family. Oh, it is the Baskervilles. Oh, there you go. I was thinking the Hound of the Baskervilles, so that's really cool. It's actually part of it. What? The Baskerville? Why is that name coming up now? Baskerville is the family name of my late brother's widow. That pure gold emblem was an heirloom which Clint acquired upon their marriage. There can be no doubt then. The collar you've described was Balmond's. Family insignia of Lord Clint Van Zieks' widow? There was a considerable amount of blood on the collar when we saw it. Since we know the dog was used for hunting, it could have been from its quarry, of course. But it could equally have been from human prey. Yeesh. So it's true then. Clint Van Zieks really was the professor? Impossible. These Japanese are making it all to exonerate their own. So, in fact, the person responsible for these murders of nobles and royals was a noble himself. That was my theory, that it was a noble. And that threatened to be an enormous scandal that would irrevocably destabilize British society. My father knew that and was using it to negotiate his way out of the unjust charges brought against him. But at the very last hour, those he'd bargained with betrayed him, slaying him mercilessly on foreign soil. Well, can you deny it, Lord Strongheart? Pickle, I'm assuming you played this before. How long would you say is left in terms of hours? If at a rough estimate. Well, can you deny it, Lord Strongheart? 10 years have passed. And still now, the 6 million inhabitants of our great capital rest easy believing that justice was done. That though his anonymity remains, the diabolical murderer was caught and executed. That's exactly what I was saying as well. Is that they executed a patsy so that one of their own wouldn't be revealed to have done it. Yep. Very well then. You may have the truth. Shit. You gonna tell us? Tell me then. Tell me what Clint really was. Still a little ways away. Okay. Would you say more than 2 hours? Lord Clint Van Zieks was too pure of heart. When he became a prosecutor and went in pursuit of the black roots of crime, he drove himself into a corner. He came to the uncomfortable realization that to fight the most fiendish of criminals requires one to become even more fiendish oneself. If you track a time and I read the dialogue, that's fair. Clint. Became like a Punisher or a Red Hood or... We haven't seen this place in a while. The 19th century was a truly miraculous 100 years for Great Britain, and indeed the whole world. New industry, new technology, and with the birth of the Metropolitan Police Service, new law and order. But these dazzling new developments meant ever deeper shadows were cast on society. Water sullied by factories, air thick with noxious fumes and crime, growing daily to fill the darkness. Lord Clint Van Zieks made it his mission to combat that darkness. But as time went on, it slowly ate at his soul, until eventually, he was consumed. It's ironic, really. Ironic. And somewhat surprising that the truth has once again been unearthed by a Japanese. Once again? What do you mean? 10 years ago, your father, Genshin Asuki, turned up at my office one night. The professor. Yes, beyond all shadow of a doubt. You must issue a warrant to search his home at once. Don't be absurd. The man comes from one of our country's most illustrious families. He's a paragon of justice here in the capital. Yes, that's the point. That's why none of you British can see it. He's using his noble status as a diversion whilst he commits these atrocious crimes behind the scenes. Poor Genshin, man. Do you have evidence? Nothing definitive as yet. But he keeps an enormous savage hound on the estate. We need the full support of the judiciary for this. We're up against a member of the aristocracy. So a large family estate has a fierce guard dog. You should know that's commonplace here in Britain. I'm sorry, but I can't possibly put Scotland Yard onto this based on the tenuous accusation of a visiting student. So I turned down Asuki's plea. And as a result, he took it upon himself to visit the Van Zieks mansion on his own. We can only imagine now what happened between the two men. Yeesh. Though we know the outcome, of course. Lord Clint Van Zieks perished. I don't believe this. So in actual fact, Kazuma-sama's father did... He made the late Lord Van Zieks meet the same fate. He put a permanent end to the professor killings by taking the drastic measure of ending the perpetrator's life. As soon as I heard, I hurried to the mansion. When I arrived, it was easy to grasp what had happened. And what about the will? Asuki must have already taken it. Nothing of that nature was found at the scene. We had no idea of the existence of such a document at that time. Yeesh. Shit's all coming out, huh? I was the only person who knew of the true identity of the professor. So, I resolved to keep it a secret, and to guard the secret to the bitter end. So you're admitting to it? That you were behind it all? It was you, then, who pinned the crimes on my father. I did what needed to be done in order to protect the law and order of the British Empire. Even if that meant employing an unforgivable ruse. Then it was you who arranged this fabricated evidence. I ordered that detective to take care of it, whilst keeping the truth from him, naturally. Gregson. Obviously, he opposed me at first. Are you off your rocker? We can't do something like that. There's no question that it was Asuki who murdered Lord Van Zieks. The house staff have made statements that they saw the man running from the mansion that night. Yes, well, I've no doubt it was that Japanese fella. We haven't got a shred of conclusive evidence against the man. And worse than that, he doesn't keep a dog. So we're short of a murder weapon to boot. And we're short on time, Gregson. We must put a stop to this man's rampage for the good of the country. So, we'll use whatever means necessary. Do I make myself clear, detective? Blimey. Damn. So that night 10 years ago, when I was attacked by those thugs in the back streets, and Genshin's ring was taken, that was him, was it? That was Gregson and some hired help. Oof. Then the detective handed the stolen ring to Dr. Wilson, who feigned its discovery from the victim's stomach during that autopsy. And in the light of the decisive evidence, Mr. Asugi was found guilty of the charges brought against him. However, behind the scenes, he had actually already struck a deal with his accusers, in which he agreed to silently accept the charges. But I just don't believe that part. As far as I knew the man, my father despised such underhanded dealings. It was extremely easy to make him comply. You see, he had one crippling weakness. What weakness? Isn't it obvious? You, Kazuma Asugi. Me? Yep. Perhaps you have no desire to return to your homeland, Asugi. What? Oh, I hear you have a 14-year-old son. Agree to cooperate and accept your guilt without contention, and you will see Japan and your son again. Kazuma 24? Guess I forgot that part. Hey, yes, okay. Where's Rinosuke? I think Rinosuke is probably 20s as well, right? I think it's more Sasato's so young. I skew my ages down a bit. You scoundrel. That's about right, then. Maybe 22. Whether you choose wisely or not, it will be a closed trial by order of Her Majesty. Whatever rash claims you might make in court, we'll have no trouble in stifling them. There's only one outcome for you, Asugi. The gallows. Don't forget that I still have a weapon at my disposal. A document revealing a truth that I know you're desperate to keep hidden. Yes, it hadn't escaped my mind, which is the only reason I'm willing to bargain with you. I only want to protect this country's law and order. You understand? So, what's it to be, Asugi? Kazuma. He did it for me. And as I told him at the time, my motive was simply to protect Britain from the damage the truth would do. To protect this country's law and order at any cost. Oof.
Objection!
I've never dared let myself even consider this possibility until now. But in the light of all this treachery, I have to ask. The mastermind behind the Reaper of the Bailey. Was it you, Lord Mael Strongheart? A rather brilliant idea, wouldn't you say, Lord Barak Van Zieks? That the spirit of your late brother, that paragon of justice, should return to reap justice for his sibling. Could there be a more appetizing tale for London's masses, I ask you? Ugh. He's such a fucker, eh? What brazen... I knew that you'd play the part to perfection, but your role really wasn't that of some embodiment of death. No, you were London's guardian angel. An angel with bloody hands? I think not. Those who had cooperated with me already were only too happy to participate in my plan. Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson. My minions worked tirelessly to ensure that the finger of guilt could never come to rest on you. It's all thanks to them that you were exalted as the demigod the Reaper became. Dr. Wilson left Britain 4 years ago when he was invited to work in Japan. That's right. So I had to employ the services of his young protege after that. Dr. Courtney Scythe. Dr. Scythe. So what with the execution of the Professor and the subsequent reign of the Reaper of the Bailey, I've successfully safeguarded law and order in our mighty capital for the past decade. That is everything. Eesh. My lords, ladies and gentlemen, I do hereby confess, it was I who sired the concept of the Reaper. However, let me say in my defense, it was all for the preservation of law and order across the entire empire. Lord Strongheart did it? An unforgivable collection of crimes, but still, all those who died at the Reaper's hand were rotten to the core anyway. If it was all in aid of keeping London safe. There is no one left now who can reveal the precise truth of what happened 10 years ago. Therefore, this trial can go no further. Now, I would like to entreat all those present. Beyond these four walls, nobody need know the truth. Even Her Majesty must be protected from this. I trust you all appreciate the importance of my request. It is, of course, for the good of the country. Can he do this? Can the trial really end now?
Hold it!
I have one last question. For the accused, Lord Van Zieks. What? Of course, I know that you're a highly accomplished prosecutor, so I find it hard to believe that you didn't have any doubts at all. That you never suspected your older brother. Right from the Queen. Ah, she doesn't need to know, huh? Yes, the same thought occurred to me. It was only once, but yes. I couldn't say that I never had my doubts. What do you think? My brother's sense of justice was extremely strong, perhaps too strong, I observed. At that time, they were members of the aristocracy who were bleeding the country dry for their own gain. And since they were nobles, they were untouchable. For my brother, it was a source of great turmoil. And coincidentally at the same time, the professor began his terrifying reign. Yeah, they were all members of the aristocracy, weren't they? The killings. During the time of the professor killings, my brother did not appear to be himself. And that made you suspect. Or made you suspect, sorry. Yes. But it was only once, not more. Only once, really. Clint wasn't the culprit. That was my conclusion at the time. And I still believe that now. Do you have any evidence to support that idea? The third victim was the Lord Chief Justice at the time. It was he who had recognized my brother's potential and trained him as a prosecutor. No matter what the circumstances, it's unthinkable that my brother could have killed his friend and mentor. That will do. Neither Clint Van Zieks nor Genshin Asugi still walk this earth. However much we debate this matter now, we cannot hope to reach a conclusion. But there are only two extant pieces of evidence from the time. The woebegone ring that acted as the incriminating evidence to condemn Genshin Asugi, and the 3-page last will and testament penned in black ink and left behind by the man. The wretched truth of what happened is exactly as I have explained. Yeah, this one, right? The Asugi papers. These. Oh, look. It was only 2, wasn't it? Interesting. Later today, I'll present myself at the Ministry of Justice for whatever sanction is deemed appropriate. That is all. Court is adjourned. You can't keep getting away with this.
Objection!
There we go. What time are we at? Oh, midnight. Uh-oh. Thank you, Kazuma. Me? If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have made this 11th hour discovery. What discovery? My lord. So sleepy. Yeah, I think we'll wrap up here soon, Farrell. We'll probably finish on Thursday, I would say. I'm afraid I must insist the trial continues. I beg your pardon? As the court has been reminded today already, we must stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth. And to that end, one particular statement made by somebody in this courtroom moments ago, the 3 pages thing right now, revealed a very subtle contradiction. What contradiction? But all I did was ask the accused one simple question. Well, it began with Lord Van Zieks and his recollection about his brother, but Lord Strongheart didn't permit the defendant to speak at length. I merely pointed out that we can draw no further useful conclusions here. So what on earth is a contradiction? One of them definitely just said something contradictory. It's time to identify who. I'm watching you pickle, huh? Watch it, huh? Lord Strongheart, I'm sure of it. Something he said was slightly off. Come on, Reynosuke. Think back over his words. Find the problem. Neither Clint Van Zieks nor Genshin Asuki still walk this earth. However much we debate this matter now, we cannot hope to reach a conclusion. There are only 2 extant pieces of evidence from the time. The woe-begotten ring that acted as the incriminating evidence to condemn Genshin Asuki, and the 3-page last will and testament penned in black ink and left behind by the man. The page missing them? Lord Strongheart, would you care to explain? Explain what, Counsel? Among the statements you made just a few moments ago, something you said was inconsistent with a certain piece of evidence we have. Inconsistent. And whilst an inconsistency remains, the defense has the right to pursue an explanation. I think what we'll do is we'll accuse this evidence so I don't forget, we'll save it, and we'll continue on Thursday. Ryosuke, what? Let me warn you about the statements you are making, Counsel. They may very well prove fatal. You claim my words contained a contradiction. With which piece of evidence, I ask you? The Asuki papers.
Take that!
And we'll save there. So we will have no stream tomorrow, and we will substitute Super Mario Odyssey on Thursday for more Ace Attorney. Exciting. Thanks for watching. Go get some sleep, Farrell. Thank you for hanging in for so long. I'm very excited, yeah. We'll see how long we can go on Thursday. I kind of want to finish it this week. So we'll see. Have a lovely night. Yep, no stream tomorrow. I'm going to go see Indiana Jones. But we will have a stream on Thursday. Thanks very much. Good night. Bye-bye.